Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar that is intended to show you how the ESOT platform for the Congress will work for the speakers and for the chairs. We welcome you and we thank you very much for all your contribution to the Congress and for your willingness to participate as invited speakers, those of you who are invited. And we also wish to thank all the chairs who agreed to chair the sessions. It's going to be an exciting experience because this is going to be the first virtual and in-person Congress for ESOT. And I think it's going to be an exciting experience to connect both online and with the person there on site at the Congress Center. I just leave the word for just a few seconds to Umberto, my co-chair of the Congress, to welcome you as well.
Yes, thank you, Luciano. Just 1 minute to say hello to everybody. We are very happy to have you on board, and thanks for responding positively to our invitation to be speakers or chair at ESOT Congress. We are really counting on you. We can't wait for your presentation. I think today will be a very important moment in order to get the Congress as smooth and easy and in line possible, because as Luciano said, this modality, hybrid modality to having in-person and virtual persons is going to be relatively new and a little bit complicated with some kind of pitfalls potential. So everybody is supposed to know exactly the function of the platform. Thanks again, and thanks to the technician that will show us the modalities for interaction. Luciano.
So I leave the word to Paul, who will make the presentation for us today.
Thank you, Luciano, and thank you, Umberto, for the introduction. My name is Paul van der Perre, and I'm with Cover, the technology company that will help realizing this virtual and hybrid Congress. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I presume that a lot of you have been in the role of chair or co-chair for a session many times before, so you'll have experience on that, but there will be a number of new things in this setup that you will have to take into account. And the idea of this call and this webinar is to show you, to explain you how everything works behind the scenes, so that you know how you will have to adapt your role with the other communication methods that we have. Before we go into the content of what we want to show you, I briefly just want to mention also that in addition to the chairs of the Congress and myself, and also Ben from Go Remote, which is a company that has been involved and will continue to be involved in helping speakers to perform best in an on-site presentation mode with trainings and with coaching. There are also a number of staff people from ESOT, Justina and Magda, and Devi from the Congress team. They are in this webinar, and if there would be particular questions that they might have a better answer on as the organizers than I will have, then they will also be available for that. And they are there also to monitor any questions that you might have during this webinar. About questions, we are in a Zoom environment, and Zoom has a Q&A function. So if you have a question that comes up when we are talking about something, please use the Q&A feature of Zoom, which is, you can access that by looking at the bottom of your screen. There are a number of Zoom controls. One of them is Q&A that will pop up a small Q&A window, and that will allow you to type in your question there. Those questions will not be processed immediately, but we will have a section for Q&A at the end of the webinar, and the ESOT staff will be going through those questions and will be sorting out. There might be questions that are similar, so we will prepare that Q&A as good as possible so that we can address your concerns and answer your questions at the end of the webinar. Also, it might be that when you type in a question in the beginning, that a couple of slides later, we are actually covering that part. So your question will be answered by then and will likely not be repeated in the Q&A. But if at the end you still have questions, you can always still indicate that by asking the question again, or also using the raise hand feature, and then we will see that. and we will try to answer all your questions. But if anything would remain afterwards, the Q&A will also be processed by the staff, and answers will be formulated to that. So that being said, let's dive into showing you what the platform is like. So we have welcome by the chairs. Thank you very much. Here is a screenshot of what the website where the Congress will be happening, where all the remote attendees will be looking to, what that will look like. And I'll have to tell you a couple of things about this website. The virtual Congress is fully web enabled, so there is no specific software that people need to install in order to see the sessions of the Congress. So the fact it just runs in a browser, it can be running on a tablet, can be running on a computer, even on a phone, because it's fully web-based. That is a great advantage, and also for you as speakers watching the programs of the rest of the Congress, everything except your presentation or presentations, or I should say session or sessions in which you're involved, you will be seeing those, and you should be seeing those by going to the virtual Congress platform, or by being on site, of course. You will receive the links and the login information for that website, so that you can see that. Now, the reason why I'm saying everything except your own sessions is that for your sessions where you are participating either as a remote chair or as a remote speaker, you will not be doing that through the website, but you will be doing that through a tool that we've created, which we call the Virtual Faculty Studio. And it's a fancy word for a Zoom call. So very similar to what we're doing now, you will receive an invitation to be as a faculty in a Zoom webinar, and we will have you present or have you watch the presentations of the other speakers, and we stream that out to this platform. I will explain the reasons for that in a while. But so that being said, for your own sessions, do not go to this website, but go to the Zoom where you receive the invitation for. A number of items on the conference website. First of all, there's the program, and that will be your main navigation to the sessions. E-posters can be accessed, and the home page has these big tiles on there in which you can go to all of those sections. The industry sessions are listed separately. There's an exhibition. Also, there's on-demand view. So if you've seen, or if you could not attend the session, but you want to see it later, you can still navigate to those sessions by using the on-demand section, and you will see everything as it was recorded during the sessions. There is information, there's a community booth of ESOT, there's a networking feature, information about the next Congress, and an FAQ. There are a number of, so all of that is available here in that red frame. There are a number of icons here on the left side, and they pretty much do the same thing as those buttons over there, but they remain visible at all times. So if you go into the program, if you go watch e-posters, you will still have those buttons with shortcuts to the other sections of the screen, of the Congress. An important one here is called Live Sessions. When you click on that, you will always have a very quick overview of which sessions are running live at this time. Another important one, of course, is the program and the networking. There is a whole chat system in which you can look up other participants and ask questions to them. That can be done to look for colleagues or look for people that you have not spoken with for a long time. Similar to attending a Congress live, you can have conversations with them through the chat system. It looks a little bit like WhatsApp chat, so it will be familiar very fast. Another thing that you can do is be available for people that were in your session. So you might be approached for people that heard you speak that will ask you a question after the session in the networking system. So moving on, so I mentioned that you can navigate through the program by clicking on that program button, and you will see an overview of all sessions with the days listed and a opportunity to sort that by timeline or on a calendar view or an agenda view. Once you click on one of those sessions, you will then see details about the session, a short recap of the content and the individual speakers. And if available, you can click through to the bio of the speakers. There's an important button there view session. That's how you navigate to that session. That button will become available shortly, about 15 minutes before the session starts. That button will be activated. And when you click, you will then have a room that looks like this, where if the program is not yet started, until 5 minutes before the session, you will actually see this countdown timer. Then when you click on join the session, you will be taken into the virtual meeting room. The virtual meeting room has two main components. I mentioned that the speakers, the remote speakers, will be in a Zoom call. The live speakers will be in the room, and remote attendees will be looking at this website. Everything which is being presented for people who are watching it remotely will be shown in this live stream window. That will have a control. I cannot show that to you now, but we'll have a control on the bottom when you put your mouse over there that you can maximize this window, and then it will be appearing in full screen view. So when there is small content or when you really need to look close at pictures, you can maximize that. You can minimize it back, and then you will have this feature with the branding of the Congress around it, but with an important part. And this will definitely for chairs will be important because the Q&A, we will try to encompass and involve everybody in the Q&A. That means the people who are live in the meeting room, but also the remote attendees. And with that, we'll actually use the fact that it's hybrid, not only as an extension, but really as a value creating part that people from remotely, who are remotely attending, can also raise their comments, ask questions, and participate to the interactivity of the session. So there is this window. It says questions will appear here. It is powered by a tool called Slido, and we will get into the details of Slido. Slido is basically a web-based application also, and we've created an integration with Slido that shows the questions which are asked specifically for this session in the virtual meeting room of this particular session, and so on for each of the other sessions. We'll get into how Slido works in detail in a short while. What will be the experience like for the different types of speakers and the different types of chairs? Basically, we will have people that are on site, and we will have people, many of you will be speaking and will be attending remotely. When we start the session, there is a technical production team. They are actually in the meeting room at the Congress. You see one technician here, but there will be two people. One person will be responsible for everything that happens in the room, for starting the presentations, speaking with the speakers who are there, making sure that the audio works, the lighting is correct. But there will be an additional technician who takes care of everything that goes out, streamed into the world, and also manages the communication with the remote speakers. So those two people then take all that content that's generated and deliver it in the room. The live speakers are standing at the podium. Their presentation is shown on the screens on site, and it is just like a normal Congress before we were going virtual or hybrid or anything. At the same time, all of that content is also streamed, as I showed, to the virtual meeting room. And that is for the presentations of on-site speakers as well as the presentations of remote speakers. You might have seen this already. The on-site delivery, there's no delay. As soon as you say something, it is heard and seen by everybody in the meeting room. Everybody who's connecting remotely, they see all of that, but there is a 20 to 30 second delay. I mentioned that we are web streaming everything. Just the nature of how web streaming works is basically results in the fact that it takes about 20 to 30 seconds to get to the person. Now, that's no problem because everybody who is watching it remotely, everything comes with the same delay. So people are not experiencing it that way. But in certain cases, especially when we go into Q&A and when we go into those things with Slido, it is important that you as faculty know that the audience that are watching remotely see everything with this short delay. Mainly when we do polls, for instance, I think some of the faculty have indicated that they wanted to do a poll. We have that possibility, but the audience will see those results of those polls about 20 seconds later than when you mention it in your presentation. Continuing on the experience, The presentation management, you've been asked to hand in your presentation ahead of time, and it's really important that you do that so our technicians can load everything in the systems. When you're speaking on site, you have two options. Either you can upload your presentation on the web link that you received, or you can hand it in on site at the on-site faculty room. There will be a number of computers there and technicians. They will take your presentation in the system, load it on one of the preview computers for you to do a last check whether everything appears as intended, and then you can go and present in the room. So you're presenting on site, and as I mentioned, we're delivering that both on site and remotely. Remote speakers, we have two possibilities. Either we have a number of speakers that have pre-recorded the presentation, and our technician will be responsible for replaying that recording. And the audience who are on site, for them it will appear like a speaker who's connecting remotely. For the audience who are connecting remotely also, they really don't even see a difference between a presentation which has been pre-recorded or a presentation which is presented live from a remote speaker. If you are a remote speaker that's going to present live, you will have to upload your presentation ahead of time so that, once again, all the systems can be populated with that. And then our technician will give you remote control to the presentation management system. So for those speakers who are remote speakers, you need to connect to what we mentioned, to this Zoom call, which is the virtual faculty studio. And we use the term studio because it's a little bit like in a television program, where you have the audience at their television sets and a number of people in a studio, and they don't have that immediate connection. So you really have this one way sending content into the world with a short delay. For the on-site chairs, we mentioned you need to go and either hand your presentation, upload it ahead of time, or come to the speaker ready room. If you will hand it in on site, you need to be there at least 3 hours prior to your session so that everything, first of all, can be checked, but also synchronized to the meeting room. So when you get there, the technician will have your presentation loaded into the system and everything works smooth. The longer you wait, the more you push if any errors happen or if anything challenging, or it might be a challenging situation outside of your own presentation, you're starting to add more pressure. So please make sure that you have in time. As I mentioned, there are a number of preview computers there, and you can definitely use those to verify if everything looks like on your own computer. And if it looks good there, it will look good in the session room. Those computers have exactly the same specifications. But please, if you still need to work on your presentation, do not occupy one of those stations for a long time, because first of all, with COVID regulations, we cannot have too many people in the room, but also we need to make sure that the process of speakers doing the last quality check will continue. So the room is intended for quality checks, not really for a long time editing or rehearsing your session, your presentation. Arriving in the session room, there also you need to be there in time, 10 to 15 minutes ahead of time, and I would say try to make it 15 instead of 10. There will be the technician, there will be, for those of you who are speakers, the chair or co-chair will be there. For those of you who are chairs and co-chairs, it's your opportunity to briefly meet with the speakers that are there on site, to check with the technician. He will have the speakers that will be connecting remotely already in the Zoom call at that time, so you can do a brief last check before you go live. The abstract presenters and the speakers, we ask you then to sit in the front of the room, so when it's your turn, you don't have to come from all the way on the back, so it can go very fast, both for your presentation, but also for the Q&A part. So we want you to be close to the podium. The virtual presenters, they will be very close to you, and when they are presenting, their content will be on the screen projected for the audience, but also on the preview monitor that you will have as a speaker. So if when you're in Q&A, let's just say that it's your turn for the Q&A, and there will be a remote chair or a remote speaker who will be in dialogue with you, you will see that on the preview monitor, the same monitor where you see also your own presentation when you're speaking. For the remote speakers and chairs, once again, your experience is through this virtual faculty studio. So when you get there, you will be greeted by the virtual stage manager, who will then bring you into what's called in Zoom a breakout room. The breakout room is specific for your session, and the technician will be there. And once, so also what the stage manager will do is do a last quality check, meaning is your audio okay? You might have done a recording before, but you might be at a different computer, and we want to test your microphone. We want to see your lighting, make sure that everything is optimized. So there will be some last minute tweaks and help and remediations, and Ben will talk about that very soon. Once all of that is done, you will be connected to the live meeting room. How will you connect to that Zoom? You will receive an individualized invitation with a link, a personalized link. And when you click on that link, you will be entering the Zoom call right away and be greeted there by the stage manager. So make sure that when you get that invitation, you save it to your calendar and do use your own invitation. As I mentioned, it's personalized. Do not share it with others. If somebody says, I can't find it anymore, if you would forward your link, that will actually come in with the same name as you, and you would have your name twice, and it becomes very confusing for the technician. So make sure that that you save that well and that you have it ready when you need to connect. Also, when you're presenting in multiple sessions, make sure that you have the right invitation for the right session, because they are also linked to the specific session. When should you connect? 30 minutes before. Don't do it earlier, because you will actually preoccupy that green room in which you will be welcomed. And it becomes also then confusing if you would be there 2 hours ahead of time, because really the persons that will be greeting you there, their role is to take you to the next upcoming session. So it can become confusing if you're not there for the next session. And also it can take a while before the operator will be with you. If they are with somebody else and taking care of some last minute logistical things, it might take a while before they can be there to greet you. Also, before you connect, it's a good idea to run a Zoom connection test, and we'll have a slide on that with some pointers to help you do that. But that's good that you have done all the testing that you can do yourself. There's an important phrase, important sentence here that says, do not open the virtual platform when you're connected via the virtual faculty studio. Remember, I mentioned in the beginning, there is this time difference with when you're watching through the website, everything is with a 20 to 30 second delay. If you connect to Zoom, which we need you to do in order to be able to capture and stream out all the information, and you open the web page and connect to your same session at the same time, the same sound is gonna play in your computer, but with a 20 to 30 second delay, and it will become very confusing. If you really are very computer savvy and you know how to handle both windows in multiple screens for multiple applications and the sound of multiple applications individually, you could do that, but it's not gonna add value for you. You basically, in the virtual faculty platform, in the studio, you will see everything that you need to see for the session. That means your own presentation, whether it was pre-recorded or whether you're presenting it live, you will see it. You will see the presentations of the other speakers, whether they were pre-recorded or they're presenting remotely, or whether they are presenting live in the meeting room. All of that will be shown in the virtual faculty studio. So when you are in your session, you have no need to go to the virtual platform. So the best way is to leave it off at that time. But there's only a little bit of content on that virtual platform, which is important, definitely for chairs, and that is the questions that are being asked by the audience. We will show you how you can see those also outside of the virtual platform, because I mentioned it's a web-based application that we are embedding into the virtual platform. We will show you where you can see that on the web without going there, so without any interference of audio from the session. So I think we covered all of that. The virtual stage manager will greet you. There's some information also here in the event. If you should get disconnected, don't panic. Just use your invitation again, re-click on it, and you will come back in, and the stage manager will bring you back into the room where you need to be. Also, in the Zoom call, during the session, you will not be able to speak to each other. You will be asked, and we can already tell you right now, where you will be asked to definitely mute your microphone, and ideally also when you're not presenting or when there is no Q&A, to also turn off your camera. But that means that you won't have a way to have dialogue with the other speakers. The only thing you will have, which is a good tool, is the chat function in Zoom. And once again, all the Zoom controls are at the bottom of the interface. And when you click on the chat function, if it's not yet in the screen, it will pop up at that time. And then you can either send a chat message to all the other speakers, or you can send it to individual people. There is a drop-down button that will allow you to do that. I mentioned the Zoom connection test. If you go, you can, even before you have any invitation or at all, you can always go to Zoom, to the website. If you go to the URL that you see on the top of the screen here, zoom.us/test. If you type that in your web browser, you will see a button that says join, and that will allow you to join a test session in Zoom. What it will ask you is it will do a test of both your camera and your audio system. It will ask you, do you see yourself? And you see, I've taken this as I was using that. So the screens are covering me, but I had my webcam on. So when you then click yes, it continues. If you click no, you have the opportunity to select another camera if you have that. But basically what you should do in the test is make sure that you see yourself. And you can already see there if you're in a good environment and if everything is appearing correctly. Same thing with the audio. Once the video test is done, it will ask you to join with computer audio. Do you hear a ringtone? Zoom is going to, in that test webinar that it has, play a ring sound. And you can indicate, yes, I hear it, or no, I don't hear it. And then it will allow you to select another audio device. To test your microphone, it will ask you to say something, and it will replay it. So if you hear what you just said, that means your microphone is working. So that's a very good tool to do a very quick test of your Zoom environment. Of course, if you've participated in Zoom calls before, you will know more or less if everything's okay, but it never hurts to go to that zoom.us/test website and do that test to re-verify shortly before the session, a couple of hours or so. Then you're in the environment that you will be using. So it's good to do that test. Also, a very important part, a lot of people have a nickname that they've put in Zoom. My name is Paul van der Perre, so I have PVDP, which I often use. But if you have a nickname like that, or if you're using someone else's computer and they've used Zoom and their name is there, or it's a computer of one of your children or whomever, their name might be appearing there. So once again, when you're in that test session, take a look at how your name appears. And if it does not appear with your full first and last name, please change it. Because for the technician that needs to put you in the right room, but also for the technician during the session, we will have 5 or 6 people in that Zoom session. We need to know who is who. So once again, in Zoom, is a very easy feature in the list of participants, which you can enable, once again, with the button on the bottom that says participants. If you click on it, you will see, and if you're in test call, you will only see yourself. You will see your name, and there, when you hover over the name, these 2 buttons, one mute and the other more, will appear. If you click on the more button, you will be able to do 2 things, either add a picture and also rename yourself. So if you select rename, you then have rights to that thing. You can delete the nickname that was there, and you can put in the correct name. So please do that, and also keep an eye on it when you're connecting to make sure that your name appears properly. You can do that at any time in any Zoom call where you are in. If you go either to the list of participants or to your own camera preview, and you right-click on the camera preview, you can also evoke that change name feature and update your name there. What will you see when you're presenting remotely? I have a couple of screenshots for you. Then once again, we will have a couple of different cases. The different participants in the Zoom call will be the Zoom technician with the on-site systems. And the on-site systems will actually, as I am sharing my computer with my presentation now, the on-site technician will share the remote presentation management system computer. That is, what you're seeing now is the interface of that system. You will see actually the names, excuse me, of the different speakers being shown there. And behind those green tiles that you see, those are the presentations. So the technician will load those when it's your turn to speak. And then you will have an interface. If you're, for instance, presenting on site, or if you're presenting remotely live, you will see a screen that looks like this. We'll go in a bit more detail of this screen, but this is basically what's called the PowerPoint presenter view. When you use PowerPoint with multiple monitors, when the output of what the audience will see is on one monitor and your controls of PowerPoint are on a separate one, it looks somewhat like what you see in the black screen here. In addition, you will also see the chat window if you have that enabled from your Zoom buttons on the bottom. For those of you who have pre-recorded your presentations, or when you, if we have a speaker that has a pre-recorded presentation, you will actually see that played in this same interface. So if you're connecting remotely, and we have either a speaker presenting in the room, or we have a remote presentation, you will see them present in this part of the window. You see, you will still see the cameras if they are enabled of the other speakers, and you will still see the chat. So during the session, this is basically the virtual faculty is your window, that studio is your window to everything in the session. Here's a bit more detail on the controls that you have. First of all, you have you will be given, if you're presenting remotely, you will be given control in the Zoom call. So the technician will select your name and will give you the control. There is a thing you need to do at that time. So for those of you who will be doing a live presentation from remotely, at a certain time, there's going to be a message indicating when your presentation has been loaded by the technician. You will see that, and then it will say that you have been given control. You need to click once in the screen to activate the control. So your very first click is not yet going to advance your slide. Your very first click is to take control of the session. As soon as you have that control, the two buttons here, forward and backwards, will allow you to do just that in your presentation. Also, your keyboard of your computer will work, but it will only work after you've done that initial click to take the control. So to advance slides, you can do it with the buttons here, with your keyboard, or with the arrow keys of your keyboard also. The only thing you need to keep in mind is when you use your keyboard to advance slides, do not hit the keyboard, but just press the keys, because hitting it will cause audio and noise of the keyboard basically to be in the Zoom call. Some other things you will see when you're presenting are a laser pointer. That laser pointer will be activated automatically. So our system uses PowerPoint, but puts a number of presets right away. So as soon as you're presenting, when you move your mouse over the slide preview area, it will appear as a red pointer. That is like that for remote presenters, but it's the same, exact same interface when you're presenting in the Congress Center. At the podium, there will be a preview monitor, there will be a mouse for you, and you will be able to use the same interface. And when you put your mouse over the preview area, it will be a pointer. So you don't have to turn around to the screen to see where you're pointing. You can actually trust on, when you see that little red dot, it's going to be appearing on the screen also. The next thing you will see is, I mentioned it, it's your current slide. That will include all your animations. So if you have a gradual buildup of different elements on your screen, you will see that in that preview. So that screen is the one where you see your presentation. Also, you will see on the right your upcoming slide, so that just for yourself to know what is going to come up. And you will see your notes if you have any. Now you see that we have a division between the main screen and that additional information. If you don't use notes, if you know very well what your upcoming slide is and you don't need that visual cue, there is a line, and I don't have the interface here right now, this is just a screenshot, but when you put your mouse over this line, which is in between, it will turn into a slider that will allow you to move that line left and right. So you can actually make the preview of your presentation a little bit bigger if you want. So just keep that in mind. And once again, that's for speakers in the session room, as for remote speakers, exactly the same. And the last thing, you'll have a countdown timer. If you use the PowerPoint presenter view, you will have seen a timer, but that usually is counting up. It will just tell you you've been talking for X many minutes. We are changing that in our view so that it indicates how much time you have left. And that the technician will set that timer based on the number of minutes that are allotted for your presentation. We'll get into the different time allotments for the different types of presentations a little bit later. Keep in mind, it is your time that you have for your presentation. Q&A, if you have Q&A right after your presentation, will not be included in there. So really the time that's indicated there is how much time you have left to present. So please do keep an eye on that counter and use it as your time in your presentation. We spoke about the Q&A and about this website called Slido. So the Q&A part based on your session time. For abstract sessions, the Q&A will be directly after your session. So you just stay where you are, either at the podium or in Zoom when you're presenting. And the chair will have looked at the questions in Slido by then and will ask the most interesting questions to you and will give you an opportunity to reply to those. The non-abstract sessions, in principle, those are at the end of the session, but there are a couple of exceptions. So please do check, definitely for chairs and co-chairs, what the individual agreements for your session are, and make sure that you organize it like that, and that you liaise with your speakers so that everybody knows when the Q&A will be. How will people see the Q&A? We mentioned the participants, they will see that in the virtual meeting application, in the virtual meeting room, right next to you presenting. They will see the questions at all times. They can type in a question at all times, and the chairs and co-chairs can monitor that. Chairs whom are on site will have a laptop, and the technician will allow you, you see that on the screen here, will preset already to your session, and anything which participants type in, either here or even through the Congress app, they can people can ask questions. Those questions will appear in that Slido interface, so you can monitor those questions while speakers are giving their presentation. That's for the on-sites. If you are a chair who is connecting remotely or a co-chair, then you can still see Slido, and we advise to do that on a separate device. Not that it's absolutely impossible to do it together with being in Zoom on your own computer, but you need to be a little bit handy with using different windows on computers. But you can also use it either on another computer, on a tablet, or even on a phone. The interface, the web interface of Slido is very, very slim, if you will. And it looks extremely good on a simple phone and is optimized so that the questions appear well. Now, you need to know how you need to get on your screen. Definitely for on-site chairs, it's no problem. The technician will do it. For remote chairs and co-chairs, you will need to know the code that you need to put into Slido. So let's go into that. I mentioned Slido is a web-based tool. So if you go to a website called www.sly.do, this will be in your instructions. You will see this website. There is a possibility here to put in an event code. And every code of the ESOT Congress will have a code that looks somewhat like this. It will say ESOT 2021, a hyphen, and then the session number. And the session number, you will more than likely already know, but if you do not, when you go to the virtual meeting platform and you are drilling through the agenda and you come to that page where you see that overview of everything in the session, it will be listed there, session code. So there is a number, and in some cases it's just a number. In other cases there might be a couple of letters, but the format is always ESOT 2021 hyphen and then your session number. If you type that in, then you will actually see a screen that looks like this, and you will see all the questions that people have typed in a web browser interface. And once again, that can be on a phone to do that. You will see the total number of questions. There will be, in Slido, people have an opportunity to like questions. And that's a way to prevent that people ask the same questions 20 times over. If I say, you know, I ask a certain question and another participant sees that and say, interesting, they can like that. And the questions with the most likes by default float to the top. Now, if you want to drill through and you say, I don't want to see that question that 400 people have already liked, I want to know what the other ones are, you can always click on that recent indication here, and then it will sort it just by the latest questions, how they have come in. So that will be your interface to see the questions of the audience. What will the audience see during the Q&A? Well, the technician will, if it's one speaker, if you have your Q&A right after your session, we will continue to probably show your last slide and your camera as it was during your talk. And actually the camera of the chair will be shown when the chair is asking you the question, or co-chair. If we are in a Q&A where we have multiple speakers because we have a Q&A panel, then the technician will show the webcam of all the individual speakers, but also the speakers who are in the session room. Whether you are at the podium or at the chairs table, we have a camera that can be remote controlled and it can pan in the room, so that the technician will bring you in that gallery view, so that everybody can see all the people who are in a Q&A panel. What's important, we mentioned already, when you are in the Zoom call and when you're not presenting and when there is no Q&A, you should mute your microphone and ideally also turn off your camera. Right before you have your Q&A, it's of course important to turn both your camera and your microphone back on. Just a little bit of inside information on why it's so important to turn off your camera, because even when you're quiet, there might be other noises. If you're in an area where there is some background noise coming by, Zoom has a feature that it tries to determine the active speaker based on where is it picking up audio. So if a truck or a tram or anything drives by as you're quietly waiting while another person is presenting or in Q&A, it can cause Zoom to think, this speaker is speaking, and you might just it's not your turn to speak, but your picture will appear then. So therefore, if you're not up at that time, make sure that your microphone is muted using the mute control in Zoom. When you're chairing a session, of course, in the beginning of the session, as I mentioned during this one, said, ask your questions in the Q&A in Zoom, explain to the people, to the participants in your session, that on the virtual platform, they can post their questions in the Q&A panel, and encourage them to do that. Also for the participants in the room, they can do that through the Congress app. Timekeeping is extremely important. It's already important in a fully live Congress, but in a virtual Congress, sometimes people think it's a virtual room, so when there are people waiting at the door, we don't see it and we're not really blocking a room. Well, these virtual rooms are used for the next session or for the next presentation also. So as chairs, please make sure that you and your speakers stay on time. When you're presenting, stick to the number of allotted minutes for your presentation. And for chairs, please make sure that the Q&A also does not extend the allotted time. You see them here for full oral presentations, 8 minutes and 2 Q&A. Brief oral, it's 4 minutes and 2 Q&A. And focus groups, it's 5 minutes presentations and 8 minutes of questions and discussion. And then for non-abstract sessions, it might vary from one session to another. There will also be always at least one chairperson in the room, so make sure to connect when you're there, to connect with the chair or co-chair for any last-minute instructions, and just so you know who's who, and that's so that they know who's who also. So that being said, that was kind of the technical part. Then I'm going to turn it over to Ben, who has already unmuted his microphone as Zoom etiquette will do, and he activated his camera. Ben is from a company called Go Remote, and they specialize in helping you as faculty to look your best, to perform your best in these virtual environments. So Ben, take it away.
Great, well, thank you very much, Paul. I'm just going to take a few minutes of everyone's time to talk through some tips. As Paul talked about earlier on, there will be a virtual stage manager who will be in each of the rooms and who will be meeting you and greeting you as you come into the Zoom call and helping you as you get to stage. So we just have a few tips. There are some people I know who have one-to-one briefing sessions. This isn't instead of that. So if you have a session like that, please go to the session next week. But for everybody else who doesn't, we just want to give a few tips so that you can get your setup optimized before you attend the event. So first of all, the network elements, obviously an internet connection is very important. And if Paul could just move over to the next slide for me. At a virtual event, having a quality internet connection. So preferably, if you do have the option of a wired connection, that is much more stable, but a Wi-Fi connection can be fine. If you are a bit uncertain about your internet connection, you can go to a site called speedtest.net, and that will run a upload download speeds, and you should be getting a minimum of about 5 megabits per second up and down. If you were getting lower or you have an unstable connection, some of the issues you could have is that you're a bit further away from the router. So if you move closer to the router, that will improve your speed, or check that nobody else is on your network. So there's not a PlayStation running with Far Cry, which can cause issues for your network when you're presenting. So make sure you're on a nice clean network. We also advise if you have a desktop or a laptop computer to connect with, that's the best device that you could be using. Ideally to avoid tablets and phones, although if you only have a tablet as an option, an iPad can still work quite well. Some basic things when you get set up: ensure your computer is plugged into the power supply so we don't lose you, and close any other background applications. So background applications can use up a lot of the computer resources, and that lowers the quality of the video and the audio. So if you close those, we'll have a much better quality video and audio on the event. So moving on to the sound, with the sound, if you do have a headset, and if Paul, you can move on to the next slide for me, please. If you do have a headset, be great if you can use this. Gives you a nice, much cleaner sound. If you don't, usually through the laptop microphone is okay, but just ensure you're in a nice quiet room where you won't be disturbed. Check for any background noises, air conditioning units, they're all turned off before you speak. As Paula talked about earlier on, if you're not speaking for an extended period of time, just make sure you mute yourself. If you are in a space that has some background noise that you can't avoid, there is quite a good application online called crisp.ai. It's an artificial intelligence machine learning device that will monitor your sound and discount the noise, and it can be very good at giving you a clean background. So if you can't avoid it, have a look at that site. It's free to use for 120 minutes. And I'd advise it for just general meetings. It's a good tool to have. So next, we're going to move on to the image. As you can see with my shots here, I've got my camera raised up to around about the eye level here. So it gives you a much more flattering look. So you're not having this up the nose look. And you can do that quite easily with your laptop by just raising it on a few books. Just make sure that if you do raise it on a few books, that you make sure it's stable so that when you touch the table, it's not going to shake and move. Sit in a nice light space with the light in front of you and not behind you with a window that can cause the silhouetting you can see in the image on the bottom of the center. We would often advise, if you have the option of having a ring light, they're a great tool and they're quite cheap. You can pick one up for $20, $30 to give you that front light. As you can see with my shot here, I have a ring light in front of me, and if I turn it off, you can see how much of a difference it makes to lifting me out of the image and giving a much better shot. Also, present to the webcam. It's very easy to be looking at the slides when you're presenting, but if you're looking at the camera like I'm doing, the audience will feel like you're talking to them. A little trick if you find it a bit impersonal to talk to the camera, is to draw a little smiley face on a post-it note, stick it next to your webcam, and it gives you something to focus on. And regarding backgrounds, a nice clean background, something that's a single color like I have here, works very well. If you do need to hide the background, we advise you use the blur function in Zoom. And you can get to the blur function by clicking either on the little up arrow by the camera, and then go to the backgrounds layers, and then you just click onto the blur, and that will turn the blur on and turn it off again. So then finally, just a few final tips is, as Paul mentioned before, please make sure your name's correctly, and if you can, put a profile picture on your Zoom account so we know. Our team will be meeting you as you come in, and we will perform checks before you reach stage. So you won't be brought in straight onto the stage. We'll have a green room section. We'll check your audio, we'll check your video, and we can help name, or if there's anything you need assistance with, we'll help you then. Very important, as Paul said, is not to stream the sessions on the platform at the same time as you're in Zoom, just so we don't want that crossover. And Paul is back now, and we'll finish up with a few final points.
Actually, yeah, Ben, I think it's very important that you recapped that last part. It's so crucial to keep the virtual Congress site out of sight when you are presenting and when you are in your session. So when you're using the virtual studio, the virtual faculty studio, and you come to Zoom, that actually it's best to turn off as many programs as you have on your computer so that they don't interfere with your main task at that time. The speakers can, during a session, we talked about that already before also, the only means of communication you have during the session, also with the operator, is via the chat. So if you're insecure about anything during the session, use the chat to ask your question there. Please, as chairs, timekeeping will be your responsibility during the session. The technician will help out when, for instance, when Q&A is coming up. They usually type something briefly in the chat. Please turn on your camera. Please unmute your microphone. But of course, making sure that the discussions do not last longer than what is allotted. That's important. And the most important point of this entire presentation, I think, is what we've come to is it's a Congress. It's a heyday for any organization that is thriving off sharing content. So enjoy it and make sure that the platforms are there. They're tried and tested and proven. So enjoy it like you would a live Congress. With that being said, let's move to some last points of information. There is a website, a web page where ESOT has lots of important information for anybody who is involved in the content of the Congress, advice, guidelines, templates, making sure also that you're well prepared, and so make sure that you visit that site for any last minute information you need. Also important, what we have just done here in this webinar, that is all recorded and will be available as of Monday on that website. Will be shared from there. And with that being said, I think we can move over to Q&A, and the ESOT team has been monitoring your questions as you have typed them in. So Justina and Magda, want to bring any of those questions to us?
Yes, thank you, Paul, and good evening, everybody. We have just a couple of more minutes left. So yes, and indeed we have a couple of questions. So I'm just trying to read them out so that we can answer. So first question comes from Luke, asking if it would be possible if we pre-recorded presentations for safety, but then if there is an option to present live again. So maybe I'll reply to that question. Sorry, Paul. Yes, we understand that probably the virtual live presentation is you know, a little bit more interactive, but it will then cause a number of technical issues, because it would mean that your final presentation is always uploaded to the central system. And then it means that if you want to present again and you want to present live, it means that new slides need to be uploaded, and the whole process needs to start from the very beginning. I don't know, Paul, if you would like to.
Yeah, I think you phrased it correctly. This system, when we are in the session, is preloaded with the right media for every individual speaker. So if you're going to be presenting live, whether it is remotely or in the room, your PowerPoint presentation is loaded in the system. If you have pre-recorded, the recording is actually loaded in the system, so that the technicians, and by the way, those technicians are processing one session after the other, and they don't have all the insights of every individual speaker. They do not have access to your PowerPoint presentation at that time. So normally the answer would be no. Logistically, we cannot make it happen at that time.
Yeah. Thank you. Then there is question from I don't know who, because it's an anonymous attendee. If the questions to the presentations will be sent prior to live presentation, if I understand it correctly, no. So the chairs and the audience will just view the presentation on the day. So yes, the questions will pop up as people are watching the presentation and are listening to the presentation either virtually or on site in the room.
That's correct. The good thing is that, well, actually, we've done a lot of these congresses with our company, and the system works very well. And if you compare it with a live congress where you have a person raising their hand in the room and asking you a question, you need to come up with the answer right away. With this system, of course, you do not have the questions ahead of time, but you already have them during the session as they are trickling in. So if as a speaker also you have the possibility to use a separate device and to look at the Slido, you will be able to see those questions so you can mentally prepare for them already.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I'm looking at the time, but still 3 more minutes. I think there is a very pretty valid question from Liz, who is asking if we have pre-recorded the presentations, when do we connect for Q&A? So I'm also going to look at Ben, but we are asking everybody to connect to the session in which they are presenting, and we are asking them to connect for full session. Not only because, you know, the session can always go a little bit faster or a little bit slower, and also especially for the sessions where the invited faculties, the session is one whole, so it's very important also that you listen to the presentations of your co-speakers. And yeah, Ben, would you like to add something also from the technical perspective?
Yeah, just exactly as you say, it's best to be there from the beginning, like you would be a normal, if there was a physical congress, you'd be there throughout, so you can see everything. It gives us time to make sure you're all checked beforehand, no rushing. And different sessions do have slightly different structures, some with Q&A at the very end, some with Q&A throughout. So just to make sure everyone's there and we're safe, we're not trying to chase people or call you thinking that you might have forgotten or there'd been a logistical issue or there's a problem connecting, which we might do if we've not there beforehand.
Okay, thank you, Ben. There were 2 questions, I think also one more in chat, except for Q&A, on how, especially people who are going to be present in Milan, how do they upload the presentation? So actually, as Paul was mentioning in one of the slides, if you will go now to the ESOT Congress website, /abstracts, there is a big button saying upload your presentation prior to the to coming to Milan. So, and then you use basically the same credentials that you used when you were submitting your abstracts a couple of months ago, or for our invited faculty and chairs. This is the same credentials that you were using when you were accepting our invitation. And we really recommend that option because, first of all, you can do it prior to the to coming to Milan, and then you can just enjoy your time instead of queuing up to submit your presentation. Yeah, and then just avoid this stress and have it already done before. And of course, also in next couple of days, we are also going to send summaries for all our faculty and for all abstract presenters. Just as a reminder, you are presenting Welcome to ESOT Congress, and you will also receive this link to upload your presentation. Okay, and I think two more last question. One very valid. Do we have to wear masks during our presentations? Yes, you have to, because we are going to be inside and we are obliged to follow the COVID protocol, which means that if we are inside the room, we are going to use the masks, and we are going to pay attention that we protect each other and we stay safe during the whole Congress. Okay, I'm quickly browsing because there are so many new, but I think we covered all the questions. There is just a bunch of thank you messages. We also thank you very much for attending. I think there is just one last in the chat that I see. When all the virtual speakers are going to receive the Zoom links to their respective sessions. So we were indeed withholding this moment so that you don't lose it in between of many emails that you receive. So Ben, I'm also looking at you, but we were planning for mid next week. So
exactly.
yes, okay, you're nodding. So that's what I see. Okay, I think
Justina, there are also questions about the in-person presentations, so we may.
Can you read it out, Magda? Thank you, because I'm just scrolling right now.
Without keeping our audience much longer, we received also 2 questions about the instructions for the on-site presenters and those being with us in Milan, whether there are any specific guidelines or instructions. There is plenty on the abstract section of the Congress website, including the templates and tips for presenters. So please feel free to browse and search for this, or contact us at the program.congress@esot.org, and we will send you the respective links.
Yes, thank you, Magda. And I think we now I can see that I think we expired all the questions. So I think, Paul, off to you. I don't know if Umberto would like to say something at the end, but from our end, thank you very much for all your effort and for adjusting to this circumstances that we are in, and we really hope that this Congress will be a very nice experience, and for those of you who will come to finally meet the colleagues that you probably haven't seen for a long time, and for those who are going to be virtual with us, that we can give you a little bit of spirit from the inside of the Congress and to enjoy with us.
Thank you, Justina. Thanks a lot, really. Just to say thank you to everybody that had the time. I know we had all a busy day today, but it was nice to have these pieces of information, extremely important, I think. And nothing to say. Thanks to Ben and clearly to Paul. They were able to make very easy, difficult things, and I'm waiting to see you everybody in Milan as soon as possible. Thank you again.
Thank you, Umberto. Thanks, everybody. And this will conclude our webinar. So thanks, everybody, for participating. Bye-bye.